Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at another case study of what $1 million can actually get you in retirement. Let's get started. First, I'll start by introducing you to Tim, the tool man, Taylor, and his beautiful wife, Jill. They have $1 million saved all together. That's broken out into $150,000 each in TFSAs. They've done a bang-up job going after the TFSAs right from the get-go. And they each have $350,000 in RRSPs, or spousal RRSPs in Jill's case. Tim's been the primary breadwinner. Jill's been a stay-at-home mom for the majority of their career. And the reason I wanted to go after $1 million in one of these videos is because $1 million has been the traditional target for a very long time. There's been lots of articles more recently that have come out and said maybe you need more than that in retirement. I definitely think for my generation, $1 million would be the bare minimum I'd want to be transitioning into retirement, but that's 30 years from now. I know a lot of people today that can very comfortably retire on less, and I know a lot of people today who could not comfortably retire on $1 million. It's always a double-sided coin to what your spending desires are. So for Tim and Jill, they're spending about $7,000 a month in today's dollars, or $84,000 total per year on day-to-day expenses. They do want to add some travel in there, so we're going to look at that. They do have a home that they own free and clear. I have them assumed to be living in Calgary, so a $700,000 home is close to average in Calgary, so that's what I have them owning there. And they turn 65 next year. Let's take a look at how this shakes out. So we'll start where I always start when I'm doing my financial planning process, and that's here with the base scenario. So for Jill and Tim, like I said, they want to be spending around $84,000 a year. They've got really, really nice, healthy assets. I should have mentioned earlier, Jill's going to be getting the average CPP. Both will get full OAS, and Tim will get about 90% of what CPP will be available to him at 65. If I scroll down, you see there's no years highlighted in red. If I look at their estate projection before tax, it's well into the positive. It's actually into 7 figures. So we know right off the hop, they're in good shape for their day-to-day spending. But just like most of you, you're going to want to have some travel or hobbies or whatever it is that floats your boat. You're going to want to have some extra on top of your day-to-day, and they're no exception. They want to be traveling for about $20,000 a year from age 65 all the way through 75. So let's look at how just adding the travel in impacts this projection. So here we've added the travel in, and we have this column here. The one thing to note here is while I have real spending and nominal, which is just inflated dollars version of the spending for their day-to-day stuff, the additional expenses that I bring into the software only shows the nominal. So it's only showing the future version. This is all after tax spending. So this is what's actually coming out of their jeans, so to speak. And at first blush here looks not too bad, but if I scroll down right around age 85, now we start to run into some shortfall. So now it's time for bringing some strategy into place, maybe looking at some sacrifices, whatever it's going to be for Tim and Jill. But we're going to start by seeing, can we solve these shortfalls with just strategy so they don't have to make any more sacrifices now, because it is only a month away from their retirement of January 1, 2025. So the first place I always start is CPP and OAS. So if we go here, we've added the travel still, and we've pushed both of their CPPs back to 70. And one of the things I say to all my clients, whenever I'm recommending a CPP delay to 70, I'm not setting it in stone or in blood or anything like that. It's the intention to set it back to 70. What I do with all the clients that stay on with K4 as long-term clients, we review the atmosphere every year, the investment atmosphere, the tax atmosphere, whatever it is, and we look and say maybe your market assets are getting hurt really badly, and it's time to alleviate stress by bringing CPP in at 67 or 68. That's totally fine. The intention behind this is that you leave it to 70, but the reality is you may not. But either way, in the 70 pushback scenario, if I scroll down, we have pushed the shortfall back, but by a whopping 1 year. this isn't really moving the dial very much. It helps certainly. What about OAS? Here I have both CPP and OAS pushed back to 70. And if I scroll down, I've actually pulled their shortfalls back to 85. They were at 85, CPP pushed it to 86, OAS actually hurt them and brought them back. That clearly doesn't make sense for them. I very rarely make the recommendation of delaying OAS, even when it looks good long term, which this, in terms of the actual math, it did improve the estate projection by like $10,000, if I remember correctly, but it still brought that shortfall back forward to age 85. But even if it has just a slight increase for a client, the psychological toll of delaying both a CPP and an OAS is rarely worth it. So like I said, I very rarely do recommend delaying to 70 for OAS. So I'm just going to scrap that idea and move on to the next one. The next thing I can commonly look at is where are the tailors taking their assets and when are they and why are they from the different sources. The software is set up to default to do non-registered first, which doesn't exist here, then the TFSA, then the registered assets. And quite frankly, I think it should be the other way around. So here I have the TFSA protected. It's not getting touched until the year that they turn 73. So it pushes off that non-taxable income, which I really like. It also brings them into a more flexible position because later their TFSA will be larger, which is a great tax manipulation tool. It's also advantageous to the estate. But in terms of their actual projection, does it make a big difference? Comparing the CPP 70 scenario to the CPP 70 with the TFSA protected scenario, we've added 1% of goal achievement. So at this point, in reality, there's not going to be a lot of strategy that's going to make a big impact for Jill and Tim. So we come to a place where there has to be some form of sacrifice if they want this particular spending desire to come true. And there are three kind of natural places to look for that sacrifice. Either they modify their spending expectation, maybe Tim works 1, 2, 3 additional years, or maybe they look at their house. Your house is a massive wealth tool that you can use. And maybe they sell and move into a condo and put a couple $100,000 away at that time. And that's what I'll project in a few minutes. But we're going to compare making each of these sacrifices individually to see what impact that would make. So the first sacrifice we want to look at is maybe they can modify their spending. And again, before I go in too hard and make people feel like they've fallen short, which they clearly haven't, they just need to make some tweaks, I want to go and see what is realistic. And there's a lot of literature and studies out there that suggest that usually around age 70, your real spending, so today's dollar spending, will start to decline, and it'll decline even faster in your 80s. So here I have their spending starting at 75, because again, I want to be a little extra conservative, declining at 1% per year all the way through the end. And this has pushed their shortfall 3 years to the year that they turn 89. That's pretty good. We're getting really, really close to this working. Let's look at maybe if Tim works 1 extra year. So now here, Tim has worked 1 extra year. He's made $100,000. And what I made the software not do was invest any of it, because it's not about the investing when you're at this stage. I say this to clients all the time. I'm in my 30s. I have 30 years before I retire. The most powerful asset that I have on my side for my financial future is compound interest. The more I can get into the markets today, the more it can compound and be beneficial to me 30 years from now. If you're 64 and you're about to retire, compound interest is already doing its thing for you, hopefully, but adding more to your investments is not going to be disproportionately powerful. What's going to be disproportionately powerful for you is working 1 more year and protecting your withdrawals for 1 more year. If I go back for a second to the scenario with the modified spending and I go up, they're pulling $100,000 from the RIF, $100,000 of total withdrawals in that year. In the year where he works 1 more year, I still do actually have them doing withdrawals, but it's only $21,000. It's an $85,000 less withdrawal. and that's in the first year of retirement. So it's the disproportionately most expensive year of retirement. So that $85,000 can really make a massive difference down the road. It's the only change that's been made. Spending's still the same. They're still traveling for 20 grand. Granted, that's probably going to be a little bit harder if you're working. But if we go down, once again, we've pushed the shortfall to about 90. And I have not modified the spending here, right? I'm isolating each sacrifice by itself, knowing, of course, the reality is they may combine some of these. The last version of sacrifice is maybe they look at selling their house. And quite frankly, this probably isn't a sacrifice for many of you. Many people do anticipate downsizing or right sizing at a certain point. So let's look at what that would look like for Tim and Jill. For them, I have them selling their home in the year they turn 78, and they sell their house in today's dollars, $700,000, and they move into a condo for $500,000. So it's probably a lot smaller, but maybe a lot more high end, that kind of thing. But they're putting $200,000 away into investments in that year. Or maybe more accurately, they have $200,000 of cash flow. Some of it will be spent, some of it will go into an investment. And we go down, and now we've wiped out all the shortfall years. Yes, this is a big win. We know now a number of things. We know Tim doesn't have to work one more year. He can. It'll be very, very impactful. But if they know that they're going to use their house at some point to extract some wealth, they can make this work. If we combine that with maybe some of the more realistic spending expectation, we know we're going to get there. Let's look at how the numbers actually shake out on all three of these sacrifices. So here's the scenario without any sacrifice. They're at 94% goal achievement for their retirement. This is good. Like, please don't get me wrong. 94 is great. I do like to see it into 100%, but 94 is not too shabby at all. Here they made the sacrifice of just predicting more accurate spending. I'm not even sacrificing on their travel. I certainly could sacrifice some of their travel. That would be maybe an even easier way to make it work. But that's added 5%, pushed it to 99% in isolation. Separately, Tim working one more year in isolation pushes the goal achievement to 99%. Or lastly, the downsize of their house when they're 78. And again, it doesn't matter what year specifically that downsize happens. I just picked 78 out of the air. That's pushed it to 102. So the reality, like I said, is the spending will probably, statistically speaking, line up probably a little bit more with this. You know that there's a downsize coming. You'll put even $100,000 or $200,000 away. These people are going to be on a great, great path. They probably do not need to entertain the one more year thing. This would be the type of scenario where I would say to them, if you want to work for your own reasons, go for it. And I have lots of clients that fit that description. I recently met a couple that I'm 100% confident that they will be comfortably able to retire at the beginning of next year. But one of them wants to continue to work. Awesome. Power to you, but know that you are working for your reasons. You're not working for your financial future anymore. You've achieved that. And that's probably what I would deliver to Tim and Jill here. I'd recommend downsizing the house in their 70s or 80s, which again, most people do. And then I recommend having us have a little bit more of realistic spending expectations. If I combine those two, we're probably at 105% goal achievement, something like that. They're going to do really, really well. If it's time for me to look at your financial picture, there'll be a link in the description down below that comes directly to me. Until next time, keep planning.